12, an asylum seeker who was jailed in Iran for his human rights campaigning says he hasn't been able to sleep since receiving a notice that he is being moved to the Bibby Stockholm barge. He said it would be another jail for him. It can't be named for security reasons. He worked as a human rights lawyer in Iran and was imprisoned for his anti-government activities, having escaped from Iran and claimed asylum in Britain, citing political persecution. He is now one of the men likely to end up on this barge in Portland Harbour, which you just heard in the news has, we think, it's being reported, has received its first 50 inmates. I think we should talk about this. I think you should talk about this. I don't know if it's appropriate to do one of my traditional treatments of this story, but I swear to you, the question I really, really want to ask is, why is this dominating all the news bulletins? And I don't mean that as a value judgment, whether you think it's barbaric behaviour or perfectly reasonable behaviour. I'll tell you something for nothing. It will not be long before somebody somewhere starts claiming that it's far too luxurious, this barge for these people, because the argument that, I don't mind at all but it's just we've reached a place now where these people have been successfully dehumanized deliberately by government. That's not an opinion. That's just counting. And if you disagree with me, it's because you have been successfully programmed to dehumanize these people. But it will be moments, it will be minutes, it will be days before somebody claims that this is too much. We can't put them up in hotels and give them 12p. We must put them somewhere worse. So we'll put them in a big converted, but it looks like a storage unit in the middle of Portland Harbour. And then someone will come along and say, well, that's too nice for them. That's too good for them. This fella's been jailed in Iran for campaigning against that regime. And now he's going to end up here. I don't know if it's a floating prison or not. I don't know who. So you've got lots of people are going to be unhappy about this. Some people don't want any foreigners being put into facilities near them. Some people will be unhappy that the facilities appear to be pretty primitive and pretty unfair. And some people, like, for example, this human rights campaigner from Iran, will be unhappy about being put in it. But why is it so huge as a story? I know, I'm not saying it shouldn't be. I want to make that absolutely clear. But a change of accommodation for 50 asylum seekers out of tens of thousands. Why? I just don't know whether the tail is wagging the dog. Government seems desperate to turn this into an issue, to turn this into another issue, another wedge issue. The portrayal of most of the people coming here as being fraudulent is, if anyone was properly paying attention, that would likely fall apart now, wouldn't it? It's really weird, this. So if you're trying to deter people who have no right coming here from coming here, we seem to have reached a place now where we're doing it by treating people who have got a right to come here really badly. Oh, but they came here illegally. Well, as has been established everywhere from the House of Commons to the dog and duck, there is no legal route for a lot of these people coming out of a lot of these countries that everybody agrees are genuine sites of asylum seeking. You're coming out of Afghanistan, you can't get down a legal route. You're coming out of Syria, you're coming out of Iran, wherever it may be. So I just don't know quite what is being done here. What is this designed to do? What is this designed to do? Why is this story so big? The status of these people has not changed. They are genuine asylum seekers. The backlog that has seen applications not be processed is entirely the fault, entirely the responsibility of the Conservative government. And yet the numbers involved are close to negligible. Certainly the numbers involved in this barge, the Bibby Stockholm, these numbers are negligible. One of the grimmest things I saw last week was Conservative politicians suggesting that the fire brigades union's concerns about the barge were insincere or somehow politically motivated, which is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. But hey-ho, Robert Jenrick's an immigration minister, so there's a lot of weird things going on in the world at the moment. I don't know if you heard him being interviewed by Andrew Castle on LBC yesterday. It's fair to say it was game, set and match to Andrew. Castle, there's a phrase you don't hear very often, even when he was playing. But but the, you know, and BBC's reported police are already investigating some threats to be from the far right to local people. I want you to explain. I don't think it would be appropriate to do the coma conundrum that I often deploy. Imagine someone had been asleep for 20 years and or even 5 years. Someone's been asleep since Brexit, and now the biggest story in town is 50 asylum seekers being moved from hotels onto a barge. Every single one of whom would much rather be working and paying their own way. So I think what does it do to you? That's the way we'll do it, actually. I'm overthinking things. It just makes me sad, but I don't know that it should necessarily. What's your emotional reaction to this story? Just tell me. It feels like a bit of a dog whistle. I'll tell you why it makes me sad, and you can tell me why I'm wrong. How's that? Is that fair? I'll tell you why it makes me sad. It makes me sad because you have had, partly as an attempt to excuse themselves from the epic failure of government, and partly because, as Brexit demonstrated, demonising foreigners, especially the ones with the audacity to want to come here, is politically very powerful. For everybody that it disgusts, there is a voter that it delights. So you do two things. There's two stories running in parallel. The people risking their lives in dinghies to come here are all swinging the lead and taking the mickey and haven't got any real right to be here at all. Some people believe that. Some people pretend to believe that because they don't want anybody coming here at all because they're foreign. Right? So you've had that. That dog's away. That dog's running now. There's nothing you can do about that. So then the government is charged with... Look, I mean, this is where I'd lose the plot slightly. The government has now charged itself with fixing the problem that it created. Yeah? How are we going to fix the problem that we've created? Well, either we process the applications efficiently and quickly and come up with a system of removing people from the country who don't have any right to be here, which, for the record, is a reasonable thing to do, even though it would upset other people. I think you have to have... a system in place, and people who fall foul of that system have no place. I think that's reasonable. Again, I reserve the right to change my mind, and I invite you to tell me why I'm wrong. So they don't do that. They don't try and process the applications. Instead, they try to make the experience of the people applying for asylum worse than it already is. And that is the hardest question to answer. Well, maybe you won't find it hard to answer at all. So I mean, of all the choices that they had, fix it, as in process all of the applications that are coming in. And for the record, we do not process more or receive more applications than other comparable countries. So you must park that prejudice immediately if we're going to have a meaningful conversation. So what were the government's choices? I see three, at least. Number one, process the applications really quickly. Number two, leave things exactly as they are. And the deal you get in these hotels is pitiful, but somebody somewhere, probably a Tory donor, will be making a ton of money out of it. Or number three, make the experience of the asylum seeker worse than it already is. I wish now I could say to you with a straight face, that can't be what they're doing. I know it looks like that's what they're doing, but that can't be what the calculation is. But then you remember Robert Jenrick ordering that the murals of cartoon characters at a processing centre for lone children be painted over, lest the environment become too welcoming. So I like it when this happens, because sometimes when I go off on these weird pontifications, I lose sight of what the story is, and you come back and rescue me. But I know exactly what the question I want to ask you is this. I want you to tell me why you think the Conservative government has decided that the way to address the asylum-seeking issue is to make the lives of asylum seekers even more unpleasant than they are already? I want you to answer that question, and that question not only, because I've asked you about 10 others in the space of the last 8 minutes, but that's the one. Why have Suella Braverman, Robert Jenrick and Rishi Sunak looked at, you can use the word crisis because the backlog is so big, but why have they decided to address the issue of asylum seeking by making the lives of asylum seekers in this country even more unpleasant than they were already? That's the question I want you to answer. Why have they done that? And I'm not asking, have they done that? Because they clearly have. That's not an opinion, that's counting. They have. They have decided that the best way, they have decided that there are more votes in making the lives of these people even worse than they are already than there are with any other option. Question number one, why have they done that? The answer could probably be because they think there's more votes in it. So question number two then becomes, do you think they're right? But I really want you to answer the first one with something a little bit bigger than an electoral calculation. Because that's almost too bleak to contemplate, an electoral calculation. Here are some people. For the sake of argument, let us say that some of them are applying fraudulently. Some of them would not, having been processed, have a right to stay here. But the massive majority will. That's not an opinion, that's counting. And the Conservative government, led by Rishi Sunak, has decided that the way to address this issue is to make the lives of the asylum seekers worse than they are currently. Why have they done that?